And today, really happy to have Lex with us, all the way from Hawaii. You there, Lex?
Yeah, hey, how's it
Excellent,
going?
great, good, good. So I got my little blurb here. I've got this written down because you've got quite a illustrious background here. So started as a shipwright in South Africa and went on to become the Beneteau South African dealer, and then went on to become head of product development at Beneteau France and USA. It's pretty amazing. Mid 90s, joined the Moorings, promoted to CEO of Mooring Sunsail, and while during that time helped develop the Leopard catamarans with Robertson and Kane in South Africa, which have gone on to a huge success. 2012 joined Marine Max in the USA, and then later on started the Aquila brand of power catamarans. So one of the rare few in the industry have worked in executive positions in the biggest boat builder in the world, biggest charter company in the world, and now the biggest boat retailer in the world. So, well, Lex, you've been a busy man. So thank you for spending a bit of time with us today to talk about something that I think is really fascinating and a huge point of interest at the moment in the marine industry, and that's the development of the power catamaran segment of the marine market. But before we get into it, Lex, well, firstly, how are you going, and what's your situation at the moment?
Yeah, no, everything's good. Busy as with boat development, but right now I'm out in we've sort of been in and out of quarantine, but I'm in Hawaii, so pretty lucky to be out here. We spend about 6 months of the year out here,
Right.
other 6 months in Florida, but also within that time, a lot of time at our Aquila factory in China. So yeah, I move around a lot and work on the internet a lot, and we've got folks we work with all over the world. So sort of been in a way business as usual, but different times, and yeah, just happy and very fortunate to be doing what I'm doing and love what I'm doing. So that's all pretty cool.
And in Hawaii leading into summer, which is another advantage as opposed to in Sydney leading into winter. So that's
yeah, well, they never really have winter here. They never really have winter.
That's true. Well, we definitely have winter here, unfortunately. So anyway, I'm wearing my last polo short sleeve shirt for the season, I think. But before we get into it, Lex, just a bit of, I guess, interest. I mean, what was actually your first boat?
Well, first boat I sailed or first boat I owned, I guess that's the quite a difference in that. But I started sailing as I did my first sailboat race when I was all of 4 years old. Dad sort of threw me out there, and in South Africa they've got a little boat called a dab chick, which basically every South African sailor learns on. It's basically just a little scow. It's like a big surfboard really, but a fully jacked up little boat with everything, travelers and vangs and everything else. Very fast little boats actually. So most South Africans started sailing. Optimus actually started after that.
Right.
But by the time Optimus came out, I was a little bit chunky for an Optimus, so I didn't spend much time on that. 505 was probably the first boat that I personally owned. And then moved on to a 22-foot little keel boat, and from there on really all the way up to all sorts of lengths of boats. So yeah, first boat, dab check, first boat to sail, and first boat I owned was a 505, I guess.
Yeah, right. Excellent. So, I mean, from little sailboats into power catamarans. Why should someone, I guess, I think that's a real key question. Why should someone consider a power cat over regular motor yacht?
I think it's the catamarans have been around a long time. I mean, it's, Polynesians moved around all the islands. I mean, everybody in the South Pacific really, their roots are probably more from catamarans than anything else. So it's nothing new, but yeah, catamarans, monohulls, particularly in sailboats and also powerboats, you know, been sort of the mainstay for many, many years. However, catamarans obviously bring a whole different angle to boating. You know, I mean, stability is obviously the number one reason why you would go catamaran, but efficiency and yeah, just, you know, if it's a decently designed Powercat, it's super seaworthy and really a great boat to be on board at sea. So I think it's sort of, you know, like the sailing catamarans. I know when I first built a trimaran, which a lot of folks down in your neck of the wood, Arthur Piver was a Piver 27 that I built at a very mature age of 15 years old. So, but, you know, we started racing that and got banned from all the sailing because we were so fast. And, you know, they said, no, we're not going to allow multi-hulls. And, you know, the reason was because they were unsafe, which was not true. It was just really because they were damn fast. And, you know, they just, folks couldn't get their head around really that, you know, and this was, you know, many years ago. But yeah, as it's evolved, Powercats, so it's obviously sailing cats kicked off really in a big way, I guess, in the 90s. I'm talking about bigger cats. I mean, they've been around a long time.
Yeah.
But that's sort of really when it really got going. And, you know, Powercats have really been in the 2000s, that, and really the 2010s, I guess, where we're at 2020 already, and time goes fast. But I would say the 2020s is the decade of Powercats. You know, I think it's really an exciting time. But stability, you know, performance, space, you know, in a 45-foot, 44-foot boat, you know, try to get the space on a monohull like that. You just, you know, it's not possible. So I think these are just, you know, there's a lot going for cats. And, you know, one thing I always love to say to folks is I can tell you a lot of monohull boaters that became catamaran boaters, but I can't tell you a lot of catamaran boaters that became monohull boaters.
That's true. That's
you know,
true.
just once you make the shift, you don't go back. It's you know, for all the reasons.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, when I started in the industry about over 20 years ago now, I mean, the sailing cats back then, we're still in that sort of, well, they're coming out of an experimental stage and starting to get much more acceptance. But there's certainly the growth over the last 10 years has just been phenomenal. And you know, I think because they just offer so much more comfort and living acceptance that you'd have in a small apartment or a comfortable apartment, and that stability factor in the space is clear. And obviously there's been a lot of product development to get to that point, and it's been interesting to see you know, Powercats haven't quite had that same acceptance yet, but it does seem to be really on that verge of change. So I mean, what do you think the next 10 years looks like in the Powercat segment?
Yeah, I think, you know, Powercats are going to grow exponentially. There's no doubt about it. So, and I think what we'll see is a little bit more specialization in different segments. So I think that, you know, there'll be, you know, right from small boats up to big boats. I think that you'll see sort of what you see in monohulls, you know, boats specifically targeted at specific segments. For example, you know, is it a trawler or is it a sport boat? Is it a, you know, center console, fishing? And, you know, they've all been around to a certain extent, but not as specialized as they are. So I think as we move forward, you're going to see, you know, some really cool designs come out. I mean, you know, the Aquila 36s, you know, I mean, when you look at, you know, which are the best-selling models in the US, which is in outboards between, you know, 30 and 40 foot, our Aquila 36s, you know, right in the mix in the, you know, in the top 8 models. And I'm not talking about brands, I'm talking about actual models. And there's a lot of models in the States. So, you know, and you see other boats, you know, whether it's Freeman's or Invincibles, you know, they're all growing. Everybody's growing. So I think it's really cool to see that the real specialization that's coming in catamarans, which means they're gonna appeal to a broader segment of folks. You know, all the reasons. I mean, the interesting thing that I love to tell people is that, oh, cats are pretty new. I said, yeah, sort of like pontoon boats have been around a while. You know, I mean, pontoon boats have got, you know, they specifically for a certain thing, but they're catamarans. They're stable, a lot of space. Sure, they're more for protected waters than that, but you know, there's a reason why they're that way and why they're as popular as they are. So, you know, if we start saying, well, catamarans, you start considering pontoon boats. It's a massive market already. So, yeah, I just see it really getting pretty exciting, and I think great offerings are going to come out.
Yeah, and I think obviously the focus down on niches is really interesting. And as we've seen with, I guess, cruising boats, that, you know, catamarans were for many years seen as slightly left of center, but now, I mean, really, to go long range cruising and coastal cruising on anything but a catamaran would be considered left of center almost, and you see that reflected in boat sales and a lot of the big manufacturers too, right? So, do you think there's going to be more development in that larger cruising segment that'll have massive, you know, wider appeal, I suppose?
Yeah, I think that's, you know, it's going to get wider, absolutely. And I think, you know, it's going to come down, what are you looking for? Do you want, you know, something that's really wide, not that fast? Do you want range, or do you want something that's faster with a little bit less range, but more, you know, better looking? You know, a lot of the cats are sort of very wide, so they get quite heavy when they get super wide as far as power is concerned. So they can't get really the. So there's a balance on beam versus length that you've got to always consider, because more, you know, bigger beam means a lot more weight with, you know, which obviously is going to be a little bit slower relatively. So yeah, I think the whole balance of that. But then guys that just want to go long, you know, there's going to be some really, you know, lovely boats out there that are going to be coming out, which are going to be just superb for long distance cruising, or for, you know, getting up the coast, doing a 400-mile trip up the coast and getting back and doing it quickly and in a hurry. So yeah.
And obviously that extra beam allows, you know, more space. So you're really seeing something that I notice is that, you know, the boats on cats are much smaller in length, but bigger in overall area, right? So you don't necessarily need, you know, nearly as big a boat in length once you start adding that extra beam from the cat. And seems to be an affordability thing there that comes into play as well, because you can often get a bigger boat for your money, from what we've noticed in our local market here.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's absolutely the case. You get a hell of a lot more boat. I mean, I like to, you know, people always tend to focus about length and say, well, I got a 40-footer or a 50-footer. You know, I sometimes say, well, why don't you talk about our boats like we talk about our houses, which is square meters or square feet? You know, I mean, you'll always say, well, I got a, you know, 300 square meter house. You know, well, when you start, and actually I've done a lot of comparisons on that, and it's astounding the square footage jump up that you end up on equal size lengths. And, you know, when you start looking at that, you say, wow, the bang for the buck is really amazing. And that's how we look at houses. You know, and I always say to the guys, you know, we've got to start in cats, start talking about usable square meter or square feet, and you blow everything out the water big time, you know, because it's fact.
That's actually a really good point. That's we should be naming boats by their square foot rather than length. So good point. So listen, Lex, I'm really keen. I mean, there's just so much going on with Aquila at the moment in terms of development, and I think it's going to be a really interesting insight with what's happening, perhaps in the segment globally, but certainly, I mean, it's just unbelievable rate of development at the moment. So, if you'd care to share with us some of the updates happening, I'll just bring up some slides here, and maybe you can walk us through a little bit. So obviously, the Aquila 44 has been a huge success for the brand, and that's hitting hull number 100, like right at the moment, I believe.
Yeah, 100's already left the factory. So we're right there with a bunch on order, you know, right now. I mean, you know, factories, the production lines flat out. So yeah, it's been a great boat. Obviously, the big thing is the big, you know, the master cabin up front, and also the way the boat runs. It's just a really, you know, in all the years that I've done development, you sometimes, you know, that just the balance of a boat, always trying to get the balance, whether it's accommodation or flybridge or salon or cockpit and all that. It's quite difficult to get always a good equilibrium with everything. And the 44 really hit it spot on. Equilibrium for six folks is fantastic. It's not, you know, obviously you can put a bunch more folks on it, but and then also boat's been very successful with, you know, retired couples that are going to spend a lot more time on the boats and, you know, do a lot of trips. We had one that just went, you know, did the loop in the US, which is, you know, really long trip, and they you know, they really loved it. So that's yep.
Yeah, I just got some vision there of the oh, there we go.
Something's happening on the screen there. Yeah. Okay.
There we go. Some vision of the 44 come up there now.
Yep.
And I'll actually just encourage anyone that's watching, any questions that you might have for Lex from here and onwards. If we can't answer them now, we'll certainly answer them towards the end of the presentation. So great opportunity to ask any questions as we go. So Lex, some of the other developments coming down the pipeline at the moment. I'll just bring this up real quick. All right, so you can see the yeah. So we have the some of the new ribs coming down the pipeline from Aquila as well.
Yeah, well, it's always, you know, it's always interested me that you don't get catamaran ribs, and you know, we've found over the time, and you know, something that we've been working on developing is always, you know, we sell a boat at 44 or something like that, and then, you know, well, what sort of rib does a guy want? Well, guy wants this or that, and then they don't struggle to fit them on the boat exactly, and the lifting points and all that. So, you know, we said, well, let's do our own range of ribs. And you know, if you think about it all, it's you know, again, stability is important, space on a rib for the length is important. So we decided, so we're, you know, developing this entire, you know, this range of small ribs, which will be, of course, perfectly adapted for the Aquilas, but we believe, you know, charter companies and everybody else, I mean, one of the nice things is the tubes don't need to come in contact with the water. They really are just huge fenders, and they don't need a drag in the water. So that for me is a big plus. And, you know, just the amount of space for length, again, is going to be, you know, I mean, that's, you know, when I thought, well, you know, 14 is going to be, when I saw the boat, I'm, wow, okay, this is like a 16, 17 foot boat. So, you know, so we're doing a 12 and we'll be doing a 10 as well. So we'll have this full range of ribs, and, you know, we believe everybody buying a kilo from us is just automatically going to buy a rib from us as well, because we'll have it perfectly set up, the lifting and everything, and really easy. So we've got some cool lifting ideas coming up as well for, you know, on our newer boats and that. So going to be pretty fun to see it all come together.
Yeah, and they range from, what you say, 12 feet through to 17?
Yeah, eventually it'll be 10 to 17 basically, but from a 10 to 14 is really, I don't think you're going to want to go much bigger, but we will have a 17 available as well, which is, you know, that's a big boat. So but we've had bigger than 17s on the back of a 48 footer. So, you know, that's, some owners want big boats on the back of their boats. So,
yeah,
another advantage of cats, I guess. But, you know, the 14 is going to be for our new 70 and a big tender for our 54. So the 12 will probably be what you stick on a 54.
Then the 32, which is the smaller of the, you know, the larger boats, I guess, has had some recent enhancements. Yeah,
so, you know, just sometimes we, you know, you know, when we start a boat, we obviously very quickly figure out, okay, maybe we can improve this, maybe we can improve that. So at Aquila, what we don't do is we, you know, if we get a boat going and we get, you know, feedback quickly and you know, on some improvements that we should do to make the boat better and more economical, and also from dealers like yourself to say, hey, maybe we need to adjust this or that, or what, you know, to get right into the sweet spot in the market. So we've done that, and we'll have the boat out probably in a couple of months back on the market with some really cool enhancements on it. And it's really a really good running boat as it is. But just, you know, seating tweaks, just some minor things on the back end of the boat. So just some really great enhancements. And I think the package of the boat will be, we had the lifting platform on the back, which was an expensive option. And I think folks were struggling to find the value and the price of that. And also it's a big item. So we've gone some of the back end more to the 36 now, but smaller, of course. So that's, you know, one of the major differences, I would say, on the boat is going to more of a 36 type back end of the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've basically simplified the boat somewhat, get the cost out of it and that. So
excellent. Yeah, I saw the 32 at Miami Boat Show this year, and it's such a great little package. People are wanting to do day and weekend boating. I could see one of those zipping around Sydney Harbour here.
yeah, that's great.
The 36, and now I'm really excited to see this new hydrofoiling boat in action, and that's it underway. I think we've got a little slide here showing the hydrofoil design underneath. So so the hydrofoil is designed not to necessarily lift the boat completely out of the water like we've seen in some of the America's Cup campaigns, but just reduce the wetted surface area of the boat. Is that right?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the problem, or the great thing with, well, a couple of things. Let me start from the foiling's not new. You know, the Russians and everybody's been doing it for, you know, probably 100 years since the first foilers. So it's not new. The big problems with the very early foilers were draft, of course. The boats needed a lot of draft to get up on the foil, so really get up. Very complex. So when the boats are off the foils, it's super deep draft, which is what you don't want. Yeah. Second, obviously, America's Cup foils, you know, the technology and the design, the cross sections, the lift that you can develop is, you know, really jumped forwards big time compared to the older boats. But of course, when you come out all the way out of the foils, it's great when you're on the foils. But when something goes wrong, it gets, you know, you can go from 30 knots to 0 knots in a couple of boat lengths, and that's not a good thing to do. So, you know, our approach on the foils is really to come up with, and this is also not, you know, a lot of this technology is not new. So I'm not, you know, we're not claiming to be the innovators of it. What we're claiming to do is to be the first production boat that you can, you know, buy it as an option, put it on and get, you know, the advantage of foils, but basically to aim at lifting about 40% of the weight of the boat, so that the boat is still, you know, runs and feels normal. It doesn't feel like, okay, you're about to come, you know, fall off, or you don't need pilot license to drive it. So really our foiling system, like on the 36, I mean, when you drive it, you don't really know that you've got foils on it, except if you look at your fuel consumption, you know, 30, 40% gains in fuel consumption. The boat feels great. I mean, 36 is a fantastic running boat without the foils, but you pop the foils on and it's really great running, and your consumption just changes completely. And you know, we've got a customer that bought a 36 without the foils, uses it in the Keys for fishing and diving, a little bit commercially here and there, and then he put the foils on it, because that's what you can do with our boats, is that you can add the foils on later on. And he was just blown away with the consumption and the whole profitability change on his boat as well. So, you know, when you talk about consumption, we talk about range. So if you can suddenly do, you know, say 30, 40% more range on a boat, I mean, that's quite a gain.
It's huge. Wow.
So, when people are looking for 2, 3, 4% in gains, and we just suddenly can say, hey, you want a lot more gain here, bolt this thing on your boat. So yeah, it's part of our, as we're going, we're actually, Aquila 44, we've now sold one, but we're doing the foil development that we can add on to the 44 pretty soon. Just some testing going on that right now. We've had a lot of demand, people asking us, but foils are not something that you can just look at and say, all right, let's just do some foils and add on. There's a lot of technology behind it to make sure that that the boat runs right with it, because you do have weight and trim, and you got to be able to allow for that, and you got to be, the boat needs to behave correctly through all these different ranges. So it's a lot of work, a lot of testing, and a lot of but 36, man, it's amazing. And again, I'll say, we're not the first people out with this, but we are the first people that can have hit it with the, buy the boat with a foil or without the foil, as you want.
Yeah.
So all of our production boats going forward, we're looking at doing that slowly but surely.
Is that right?
So,
wow.
Yeah.
And actually, we had a question here from Amanda, just to clarify. So you can retrofit the foils onto a 36 after the boat's on the water.
Yeah. So just a little clarification. Yes, it's from about, I think it's hull number 44 or something, and we're shipping out hull over, I think 88 or something is ready off the factory now. So from a specific hull number, yes, you buy the boat, the reinforcements in there, everything's there. There's just cover plates on it, so you can add the foil later on. You don't have to buy it now, and it's as stock. It comes that way. So it's a pretty cool thing for folks.
Yeah, so the addition is obviously this large foil in the middle and a couple of smaller foils down there at the transom. So again, to answer Amanda's question here, what extra draft does that add to the boat? Is it a lot?
So on the 36, it adds a little bit to the bottom of the keelson of the boat, but it's not as deep as the prop, so it's less depth than your outboard motors.
Right.
So on the 44, what we've done right now is we'll add no depth to the boat at all, because obviously it's not a boat that runs at 40 knots. It's a boat that runs in the mid 20s. So you have a different, obviously the faster you go, the more you get out. So you can't get lift unless the foils are in the water. But it doesn't add much to the draft at all on a 36. It's really negligible. And if you've got to have your props in the water, you're no deeper.
And obviously, like the America's Cup had a huge amount of foiling development. Is this some sort of trickle down from America's Cup? How does this all develop?
Yeah, well, the fun thing is on the R36 foils is Pete Melvin, from Marillion Melvin, who designed the foils, who was actually on the Team New Zealand, one of the designers that was developed the foils in secret up somewhere on some little lake. So yeah, there's definitely trickle down on particularly on the cross sections. But again, I just want to point out that foils, you can either focus on efficiency or high speed, and we focus on the efficiency side really. So it's not about taking a boat that does 40 knots to 60 knots. That's not where we go. What we want to do is go at the sweet spot in the mid to high 30s and really gain the efficiency and the ride, improve the ride of the boat. So that's our focus on the foils, and not having to be a pilot to fly it. So,
yeah. So essentially, you still got the stability of the catamaran because the boat's still in the water, but you've just lifted so much again out of the water, right? So you drag.
Yeah, and you don't. When you ride the boat, it's pretty interesting because you don't really realize it until you look back behind you, and that's another great payoff of the foils is you go from a wake that's maybe 12 to 18 inches high. You suddenly have a wake that's like just a couple of inches high. I mean, it's water's almost flat behind the boat, which is really a cool thing as well to add as a net gain on the boat as well, is that you just have a lot less wake.
Sure. quick question here from John. Any problems encountered with the foils catching weed or seaweed kelp?
Yeah, no, yeah, of course you can catch it, but we haven't had I mean, it just gets rid of it.
I guess when you're doing 25, 30 knots, it doesn't hang on.
Well, I've had a big plastic bag that's got on it, and you'll feel it straight away, and you just back it down and off it goes. It's just like getting something around your prop. I mean, it's not going to be any different to that. I think it is a concern that a lot of people raise, but it really isn't an issue. I mean, we've tested the boats in the river off the factory, and there's a lot of crap in the waters there. And I mean, we banged things, and it's not a problem. They're really strong. I mean, it's sort of like a keel of a sailboat. I mean, you have to make it strong, and it has to be able to take a knock. And they can take a knock. So you don't need to sort of think, well, I need to treat the boat more delicately and all that. No, just use the boat the normal way.
So just on that point, what are the foils actually made out of?
So on the 36, we use an extruded aircraft aluminium grade, and we own the extrusions at Aquila, and then they're welded by expert welders, and then they go through a heat treatment process. And of course, you need to bond them, because that's obviously another concern that you got to have in salt waters. You got to make sure you got it really well bonded so that you don't have any electrolysis issues. But we've taken care of all that, and then you got to maintain it like the rest of the bottom of the boat. You get barnacles on a foil or barnacles on the bottom of your boat. It's the same. You need to take care of them and make sure you got them in good shape. So, but it's like a keel on a boat. I mean, it's like anybody saying, well, you got to keep it smooth and make sure that it's working, make sure it's anti-fouled, and it's not really an issue at all. But the payoff is so big. I mean, the payoff is massive, and it's going to take time for people really to understand how big the payoff is. But if you think you're filling a boat up for $600 or whatever it might be, and suddenly you're throwing $400 in for the same. I mean, that's a big difference.
Well, particularly the lifetime of the boat. We're talking
exactly
5, 10, 20 years. It's huge. Yeah. And just one last question on the foils before we move on. What sort of boat speed do you need to get up to before you start getting that effect, or is it literally from the minute you start moving?
No, so on the 30, it changes depending where you target the foil to be effective at. But like on a 36, you probably really starting to feel it from 15 knots, which is probably for most foils, because you got to get the water flow getting across there. But that's probably 15 knots. You're starting to really get the effect of it. But it will help. For example, you won't feel the boat. Normally when you're getting up onto the plane, you'll feel the boat. So with foils, it doesn't have that sort of, on monohulls we call it the hump. We don't really have a hump on catamarans as such. It's a little bit of a hump, but the transition is so smooth from as you speed the boat up. It just stays very flat, the boat, and just lifts and lifts, and you really don't even really realize what's going on. And as I say, unless you're looking at your speed and your fuel consumption, then you really say, wow, okay, this works.
Yeah, very neat. We'll move on from the foils. We might have some time for more questions at the end because they're piling in. But another little mod, which we're really excited about seeing on a boat just arriving in Australia right this weekend, is the closed-in cruiser version of 36. So it's got a new sliding door arrangement to close up the interior there.
Yeah, it really worked out well. I was even, because obviously the 36 was my baby with it all open look, and we had, folks like yourself, the guys that represent us so well around the world. And they say, hey, how about doing a closed one? And I was like, oh, all right, well, let's give it a go. And when we tested the first one in China, I was like blown away by it. It was just so cool. And it really has a very different personality, and it's going to attract a different customer. But you know, somebody who wants to spend more time on the boat, cruising, staying on board. If you know, if air conditioning is, you know, you really want to keep cool or keep warm. So you know, if it's areas that are colder or super hot, it's going to be really a great, you know. I mean, the boat. I mean, you'll see it soon, and it is really cool. And you know, when you're driving the boat, you close the doors. It's just so quiet inside. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you'll love it, and I think you know it's going to definitely bring a different clientele onto the boat and open up cruising grounds big time.
Yeah, I think for East Coast cruising on that little 36, we're a great little boat for couples. So yeah, can't wait to see that one soon. And what's interesting is there's been so much development at the factory with the Aquila too. So someone said that you've got 1 million square feet of floor space now, and obviously doing tank testing of the 36s.
Yeah, so we will have another big, which is really the new factories for all the smaller boats, where there's ribs, and there's a bunch of other models that we're working on, which will expand the range. You know, down on the smaller end, because you know, Aquila, we're going up to 70 foot now. We're also going down, and so yeah, it's a big factory. But yes, you know, we always want to run every boat, run the engines, run the generators, make sure you know that everything works on the boat properly. And with the rate of the 36 being produced, is yeah, we put in an indoor pool. And we've got the roll-away roof that you can see there. That's got a sprinkler system in it, so we run sprinklers over the. You know, we have our indoor shower on the boat overnight, and then and great lighting as well. So you know, it saves us a lot of time, and but yet the engines are run, everything's tested, air conditioning, a whole lot of tested inside. So yeah, it speeds everything up, and it's a great addition. So again, this is, you know, it's the maturing of the brand, the maturing of the factory. That's all coming into play here. So step forward.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic facility. Obviously expanding fast. But wanted to dive in a little bit on some of these big models coming through, Lex. I mean, there's a huge developments that you've got with the company here, and including a 54 and a 70 that are planned. Are they still planned to be launched this year, or is that next year now? What's the
no, they'll be in they so both the hull 1 and 2 of the 54 and the 70 are under construction right now. Well, they're on the production lines right now. They're out of the molds, and moving, you know, fast forward. Obviously, the first ones always take a little bit more time, but we should have them both in the water by the middle of the year, and in the US initially, sort of in probably around about September, October. So yeah, it's an exciting year for Aquila, because you know, these are pretty cool boats, both of them, and really looking forward to them. A lot of development time, and the cool thing with these boats is that we actually did a lot of research with customers and that, monohull customers, because we were trying to understand, you know, how do we attract more monohull customers across to Powercats, you know. And what we found is they all love the idea of Powercats, but they really want them to look more like a yacht, really. They don't want the boxy feel and the boxy look. Some people love the boxy look, but we had a very strong feedback that folks wanted to look more like a yacht. So, you know, we've really achieved that. So, and they're going to be nice boats, very, very different to everything out on the market. You know, interior styling and all that is really, really nice.
So yeah, this is designed by J&J Designs again?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, they've done a fantastic job. I mean, the amount of feedback we've had on just, you know, the I guess the dockside appeal or waterside appeal are just fantastic looking boats. It's such a departure from what we've seen in particularly the larger Powercats from.
Yeah, I think that's really where we, as I said right in the beginning, I think you're going to find, that everybody's going to specialize and, get really to get, because more people are going to come towards cats for the reasons that we all said. So we've got to understand what's holding some people back. And as we all move forward, we, different brands have their own identities, and our identity is clear going forwards.
Mm. So just tell us a little bit what we're looking at here, Lex. So obviously you've got a big platform there for the Aquila rib to go on the back, hydraulic platform, I take it, and then full.
Yeah. So we've we've developed a lifting beam which actually comes out of the. So you'll see there's no davits or anything on this boat, but it's actually a beam that slides into the fly bridge and it comes out, and then it lifts the dinghy up on an arm and then moves it out over the water. So because what we found is typically between cats is that you have a dinghy that fits between the hull, or you have to hang it all the way behind the boat, which gives you a lot more length in marinas, and particularly in Europe. The feedback is they don't want the dinghy sticking that far out the back end of the boat because of the stern to tying. But then people also want a big dinghy. So, if you have a little dinghy, you can fit it between the hulls. Like a lot of the sailing cats, the hulls are very far apart. You can get a decent dinghy because the beam ratios are so big. But for us, we've got big hulls because of the accommodation, and we design our boats to carry a lot of weight, water, fuel, everything that everybody else puts on, and the ability to put a big dinghy on. So the dinghy actually rests on that platform. It is also hydraulic that can go down to the level of the aft steps. But your dinghy, so this beam will just come out of the fly bridge, hook it on all through remote buttons and that, and it's a pretty nifty little system that people, and plus you don't have the davits. It's always a thing that's bothered me is when people say they want the boat to look like a yacht, that means we don't want davits and frames and everything sticking out the back end of the boat, the goal posts and all that. So that's what we've come up with. The 70 is a little bit different. We've got almost a slipway that the boat goes in longitudinally. Right. It goes up the slipway, and then the slipway comes up and continues the bridge deck. So it's a little bit of a different approach. Because we've got enough length to get the boat, get the dinghy. So you pull it into a marina and then lift it up. Pretty neat.
Well, let's come back to the 70. What sort of motors you're running on the 54 here?
On the 54, we'll go from the Volvo D6s, which are I think the standards 380s, and the options are 480s, or you can go up to 600s, which is a much bigger engine then. So it seems like the 480s, because we've sold quite a lot of these boats already. Interesting enough, to Aquila 44 owners are moving up into this 54, quite a few of them, which is pretty cool to see that. But they all seem to be quite happy with twin 480s and the performance that it's going to be sort of low 20 knot range, cruising 17 knots, and that seems to be what a lot of them. But if you want something that can go in the upper 20s, then you want to put the 600s on it. But wow. So it's really up to. But most of the boats, I think, out of the first 10 ordered so far, I think is one boat with 600s. The rest are 480s. So that seems to be where the sweet spot's going to be for the boat.
Mm. And the fly bridge, you've got options to obviously close it in and open it up as well. Yeah, so it's a little bit of a different approach here again. We have a Portuguese bridge around the top. So one thing that we found is a lot of these, on a lot of Powercats, the fly bridges get so big that they get very difficult to enclose properly. So we've elected a really good sized fly bridge
but also bring in a Portuguese bridge and the ability to fully enclose, either with glass or with, I think in Australia you call them clears, we call them isinglass and that. So you really can go, but your front windscreen is fixed glass. So we have a fixed glass front windscreen because, you know, what we found is most people kept it closed, and then they'd sort of flap around and you didn't have proper windscreen wipers. So we've elected to make them, the forward-facing fixed, proper windscreen wipers, and then the rest you can then decide as an owner, how do you want to go? If you want clears, then you can roll everything up and open it up, or if you really want something and you want to air condition and and keep really comfortable and dry and everything, then you do the fully enclosed. But the cool thing is it's the typical the thing that we believe in is the forward access, and then running up into Portuguese.
Great feature on 44, and you've kept that, which is excellent to see. But obviously the beam of the boat still allows quite a large flybridge still, right?
Oh yeah, the flybridge is big, but what we found is the challenges you get is air conditioning and that. Oh yeah, you've got plenty of space. It's really, really very comfortable. But it's, I mean, some of the cats have these huge flybridges, but it's impossible to enclose them. So, if you get a bit of rain or something, it's not that nice up there, and it's really the best place to be driving a boat from. So this is really super nice.
Yeah, no, it's great looking arrangement, and you can see these big panoramic windows around here, and that's obviously into the master cabin, and that's these windows here, right? That we're seeing in
correct. Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's going to the master cabin on the 54 is it's going to be quite something, and you can get the boat in a 3-cabin, 4-cabin, 5-cabin version. We've also come up with a what we call a galley down version, which will have an incredible salon. So that's for the folks that don't want the galley in the main area. I think probably Australia, America, the galley's always going to be up in the main area because that's sort of where we will want to be. Yeah. But there are markets that don't want the galley. They want the galley down below and out of the way and dirty pots and pans and that. And but more for entertaining. So, but yeah. So
that's the layout with the galley up configuration there.
Yes. Yeah.
Obviously, your main saloon seating.
So one of the changes, we've gone for more comfortable seating in the salon than the other boats that we've had in the past. So a little bit more modern styling and various things like that. So the boat's going to be stunning boat. The window line is lowered so that you can see out the boat very easily.
The huge windows, yeah. Looks like massive visibility through it.
So, and then, the 44, what people love is the bar at the opening end with a galley up. So we've maintained that feature as well. So,
right. And then out in the stern area there, I'm not sure if we've got a photo of that. No, we don't. But you've got a large bench seat and table seating out there for outdoor al fresco dining. Yeah.
Yeah, and then refrigeration is another thing. We've got full height refrigeration, big fridge, which we got a lot of requests for. So nice fridge, and just a lot of great customer feedback that we've built into the boat and that. So nothing is like your 44 customers have spent a lot of time to give you feedback on what their next boat should look like.
Cool. Yeah. Fantastic. And then obviously another big step up into the new 70 model. Now that is that's quite a ship. That's extraordinary.
Yeah, it's a big jump up to 70. The systems of the boat are, it's just a whole different world, and it's going to be quite a boat. Yeah. So, I always like to point out to people, if you compare it to some of the other 70s, we're not as wide. We haven't focused as much on this, huge beam with the 70. What we focused on is really, performance, boat that's handleable by an owner operator. This is about as big as you want to get on a Powercat that an owner can operate. So we've got, again, with a fly bridge up top, we joysticks out on the sides. The docking is really made very easy. So you steer from inside the fly bridge, or you can walk out to the sides and look right down and see exactly how you're docking. So it's, they're little pop-up little joysticks, and so a lot of detail on this boat. Super.
Obviously, you've got air conditioning options for the fly bridge and full enclosures up there.
Oh yeah. That's absolutely, yeah. Very powerful air conditioners. yeah. So.
And what sort of boat speeds do you expect to see out of the 70? I mean, that's a big boat to be.
Well, with 1,000, we've sort of, probably hoping to be around about 27 knots at 30 miles an hour. Sort of, that it depends on the loads that you're going to have on the boat, how much fuel and that. But with, that's. But that's sort of been the target of where the boats. We're weighing the boat with scales as we're going along, and we're right on weight targets right now. But the boat's, it's got carbon fiber. The main structural bulk is a carbon fiber, a lot of carbon fiber reinforcing in that. And again, we didn't want to go too wide, because when you go wide, your structure has to increase a lot. Right. So you add a lot of weight without really getting any benefit in your hull, so you have to balance that pretty carefully. Your beam to length ratio. A lot of waterline length on this boat. Of course, we've got the bulbs, which proven to be really good on the boats, and so a ton of waterline length on the boat. So if you want to go displacement speed and really get good range, then you can drop off the plane and sit at 9 knots, 10 knots, and you get some great range on the boat.
So these boats will be suitable ideally for people wanting to do longer range cruising up and down the coast, Australia.
Oh yeah, if you wanted to do transatlantic stuff, which I don't think many people would want to do it, then you want to probably go down to a smaller engine and add more fuel. But the majority of people that are wanting to do a week's trip on the boat, or a couple of weeks, and shoot up somewhere. The boat's really well proportioned in terms of speed and range. But you can adjust that because of the long waterline and the slender hulls. She's pretty efficient at the slower speeds as well. More efficient than equivalent monohulls. So yeah, the boat really can run either way. So,
and I guess one of the benefits of bigger Powercats too, particularly for people thinking about cruising who don't want to agonize so much about the weight that sailing cats have to deal with. I mean, a Powercat, you can load up a lot more, right? I mean, these boats are designed to.
Yeah, you can with the Aquilas, because we do that, but there are a lot of, and I do always like to mention that, is that there are a lot of Powercats that come from sailing cat hulls, and to your exact point, they are more slender hulls, and they're easier driven at the lower speeds, but they basically are not really designed to load what one needs on a power boat. With a boat like this, we've got twin generators, redundant systems. There's a lot of weight, a lot of battery power, a lot of big air conditioners, big engines. So you got to design the hull to be able to carry this sort of weight. So no, that's a good point that you bring up. Is the hulls have to be designed to carry the weight. That's for sure.
And that's a really interesting point, Lex, and something that we talk about a lot with people looking at different types of Powercats. I mean, what does that look like in terms of hull shape? When you're looking at a sailing cat hull, or a boat designed to essentially sail, versus something like the Aquila that's designed to be up and moving faster.
Well, normally the first giveaway is if you look at what their standard engine is. So, if you take 67 footer and it's got twin 300s in it, you're probably a safe bet to know that boat's a sailboat derivative hull, with a couple of modifications, but that's So if you look at, and we, we're not the only brand there that, that builds pure power cats, but if you look at them, they're like us. I mean, our standard engines on a 44 are, around 300 horsepower. So if you're getting a 67-footer or 68 or whatever, with twin 300s, yeah, the boat's going to, it's going to have great range, but at a slow speed. And that's sort of really the first giveaway that you're going to get, is it's not really a really real power cat. And I think that it is an important aspect, and people shouldn't, underestimate that situation, because if you want speed, you're probably not going to ever get it if it's based on a sailboat derivative hull. They'll be super efficient at low speed, no doubt. So if that's what you want, cross the Atlantic or cross the Pacific, yeah, that's probably a good boat. But that's not what we're trying to sell. We don't position ourselves there. We're more, if it's an American wanting to go to the Bahamas, the Caribbean, perfect, our boat probably for your area. Guys wanting to go up the coast, perfect boat for that. But somebody wants to, cruise the world, you probably other boats that are probably better suited for that. You just can't do both. With power, the whole dynamics, it just works very differently to get up on plane, and your hull has to be a different shape.
Well, and that's a big part of it, isn't it? You're talking about essentially planing hulls versus displacement or semi-displacement.
Exactly.
Hulls.
Yeah.
So boats that are designed to cut through the water as opposed to get up on the plane and get your fastest speeds.
Yeah. And there's no secret to that. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's and that's where we are. We're Powercat, and we believe that that's it. But there are other boats that are really great, but they just fit a different segment. And
yeah, I just think it's an interesting point there, because I'm really on performance. I think it's a really important factor, and when you see people loading up sailing cut hulls with so much gear and then disappointed they don't move, and they essentially become motorboats, and then, well, you might as well get a motorboat that's designed that can far properly.
It's always quite fun, because so many catamarans end up having to extend their hulls to be able to add on pieces on the back. That's often a giveaway as well. So because they just don't have the the load carrying ability, so they've got to make the hull longer. So that's very true.
Well, listen, we're just coming up to the hour mark there, Lex. Well, any questions that anyone else has, please ask them now, and we can put them to Lex. Jason, I think we touched on it earlier, but again, the 54 and 70, I mean, when do you expect to see those in a position for someone to actually have a look at them? And obviously there's restrictions with travel at the moment, but where will these first boats end up being?
Yeah, well, at the factory, obviously everyone wants to go to the factory, which of course we love having people there, but travel is obviously, going to be somewhat different, I guess, for most folks. But, middle of the year, we, probably July, August, and then they'll be shipping the first ones. The 54s, we'll have a, full-on production line. The 70, we've got hull 2 quite a long way behind hull 1 as far as stages are concerned. The 54s will be, lined up on the production line, various stages, probably by, July, August. You'll see from finish to all the different stages in the factory, and then we'll have them in the States to be able to see, definitely at the boat shows in October. We're October, November, probably Fort Lauderdale will be probably the first real showing of both boats.
Excellent.
So that's November.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully there'll be a bit more flexibility around transport by the end of the year, or certainly next year. We're really excited to see these boats, and perhaps we've got some options in our part of the world before then, but who knows? And just to clarify again, these bigger boats, Lex, you're saying that eventually you expect to see foils as an option on these too, even on these big boats?
Yeah, we will. That won't be for a short while, but because, we've got to get the boats running first, make sure they're running correctly, but it'll be an ongoing process that we keep working towards more and more foiling. So, but again, it'll always be an option. It won't be, but you can add on. So, over the years, I wouldn't like to give a date because it's, we're working on model by model. And as I said, it's not something you just design a set of foils and throw them on. And, we have to test them. It is an extensive testing process. I mean, every time we design foils, we run a lot of CFD analysis, computational, a lot of different scenarios. Then we'll build a set, then we'll fit them to a boat, then we'll run them, and then, I mean, the 36 actually was pretty much out of the box, was running, but I'm hesitant to say exact dates because when they're out there, they got to work.
Yeah, fair enough, and we'll hold you to it as well. So all right. Well, listen, thanks so much, Lex, for spending some time with us this morning in our part of the world, this afternoon in Hawaii. There's so much to cover there. I think we'll have to dig down and deeper into some of these models at a later stage because there's obviously some really exciting developments, particularly in those bigger boats. But and the foiling is just extraordinary. So. But before we go, what's on your bucket list, Lex, when this is all over? And where are you going to go? Where are you going to?
Well, I got to get to the factory as soon as I can. We've got so much exciting. I can see it through Skype and cameras and that. But it's not like being there. So, I'm just chomping at the bit to get out to the factory right now because we've got so much, so many new models. I mean, that's and over the next couple of years. The cool thing with Aquila is that we will have the biggest range of Powercats available by any brand in the world, pretty shortly, because certain brands focus on certain sizes. But, Sina Eagle has invested in a lot of factory space and a lot of new design. And so that's really what I'm so excited about. 2021 is going to be, in 2022, a lot of stuff on the drawing board already. So it's exciting times for Aquila, and we're going to become a little bit of a pain in the neck to a lot of other brands, and I look forward to doing that. So
exciting times. Well, thank you so much for spending the time. And if anyone wants to see an Aquila 36 or 44 in Australia, we have boats in various locations, including Sydney and Brisbane. And we've got some new boats. We've got a new 36 and a brand new 44 arriving in this next week. So we're excited to see those. We'll also have a charter